Eli and Zayn. You are not just two sides of the same coin, but the very heart of this river. Hope and strength are not opposing forces, they walk hand in hand. But remember, the choice is not mine to make. It lies in your hands, and in the hands of these people. Let the river guide you, but it is you who will decide your destiny.
At a small, peaceful village nestled by the banks of the Mississippi River in the heart of Louisiana, tales of the river and its mysteries had become an integral part of daily life. Yet, no one could have imagined that, on one fateful night, this very village would become the center of a prophecy that would change everything. Amara, a young and talented weaver, was the central figure in this story. Her life had always been serene, woven into the soft fabrics she crafted and the quiet rhythm of the Mississippi River. But tonight, the full moon's radiant glow illuminated the waters and opened a gateway to another world. That night, the full moon hung high in the sky, casting a silver glow over the Mississippi, transforming it into a shimmering, mystical veil. Amara sat alone on the grassy riverbank, her gaze fixed on the rippling waves sparkling under the moonlight. Insects chirped in the stillness, creating a mysterious symphony of nature. A gentle breeze played through her jet-black hair, carrying the delicate scent of wildflowers along the riverbanks. She often came to this spot to unwind after long days of work, but tonight something felt different. The river seemed more alive, its waves whispering secrets of a world beyond human comprehension. Amara! A deep, commanding voice suddenly broke the stillness. Amara jolted, her eyes wide as she turned around. Before her, rising from the water, was a glowing figure. A radiant aura surrounded the tall silhouette of a man with piercing eyes, sharp as blades, exuding a power that froze the very air. It was Kean, the legendary river guardian and deity of the Mississippi. "You have been chosen?" Kean's voice thundered, like the roar of the river in a storm. Amara stepped back, her bare feet feeling the cold dampness of the grass. "Who are you?" she whispered, her voice hoarse with fear yet tinged with curiosity. Kean moved closer, his radiant light intensifying and reflecting off the water like lightning splitting the night. "I am Kean, god of the Mississippi River. I bring a prophecy that will change everything." Amara stood frozen, her hands unconsciously clutching her skirt, her heart pounding. "What prophecy? Why me?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You will bear 2 children," Kean declared, his words echoing along the riverbank. "One will bring hope, light, and renewal. The other will bring destruction, darkness, and an end. Your decisions will not only shape their destinies but determine the future of this village." Amara's mouth fell open, her words failing her. Her hands trembled. I don't understand. How can I decide something so immense?" she stammered. Kean gazed at her with a look of both authority and profound sadness. "You do not need to understand now. But remember, your destiny is not merely a choice. It is a challenge only you can face." Before Amara could respond, Kean raised his hand, his glowing finger like a divine torch. He lightly touched her forehead. The world seemed to explode. A surge of powerful light swept through Amara, pulling her into a whirlwind of emotions. Fear, hope, and helplessness swirled together into a torrent that plunged her into a dreamlike state. Visions of 2 children flickered in her mind. One had radiant eyes and a smile as brilliant as the sun. The other, with deep, enigmatic eyes, seemed like the night engulfing the sky in shadow. As the light faded, Amara collapsed onto the grass, her eyes closing, and she fell into a deep sleep. In her mind, Kean's prophecy echoed, "Hope or destruction, you will decide." When Amara awoke, the sun was already rising over the horizon, bathing the Mississippi in golden light, but her thoughts were far from the serene morning. The images and words of Kean replayed endlessly in her head like an unending melody. "How could this happen to me?" she whispered, her hands trembling as they cradled her face. "I'm just a weaver. I'm not a hero or a savior." Yet whether she wished it or not, Amara knew that her life had changed forever. The Mississippi River was no longer just a part of the village. It had become the thread connecting her to something far greater. News of Amara's encounter with the river god spread swiftly through the village, like fire racing across dry fields. The elders told ancient tales of Kean, the protector of the Mississippi, who was said to appear at pivotal moments to deliver prophecies. To them, Amara was no ordinary weaver. She was chosen to herald a mysterious future. But not everyone believed her story. "She's just dreaming," a woman whispered while washing rice by the riverbank. "No one gets chosen by a river god. It's just a myth." Others, however, believed Amara's tale to be true. "If it is," the village elder said, gazing toward the river, "then we stand at the crossroads of history. But whether this prophecy brings hope or ruin, only time will tell." Amara tried to carry on with her daily life, but the villagers' stares, their curiosity and doubt, weighed heavily on her. Each time she passed the river, she felt an invisible connection, as if the water itself was watching her every step, waiting for something monumental to unfold. One night, as Amara stood by the river, lightning suddenly split the sky, its brilliance reflected on the dark water's surface. Thunder roared like the cry of a colossal beast. The Mississippi, once peaceful, now seemed like a wild creature coiling and preparing to strike. Amara felt an unnamed fear rising in her chest. She knelt down, her hand touching the cold water, as if seeking answers. But instead of peace, she felt a strange surge of energy, as though the river had awakened, breathing heavily in anger. "This is a warning," she murmured, tears streaming down her face. "The time is near." The river offered no response, but one thing was certain. Amara was no longer just a weaver. She was at the heart of a story beyond imagination, where hope and destruction would collide, and she had to prepare for it. Beneath the moonlight, the Mississippi River continued its flow, carrying secrets and destinies known only to the river god and Amara. One thing was undeniable. Every gaze, every hope, and every fear of the village now rested on Amara, the woman chosen to bear the weight of the prophecy. And from that moment, Amara knew she had to face the future, no matter how unexpected or perilous it might be. News of Amara's pregnancy quickly spread throughout the small village by the Mississippi River, like a breeze sweeping across wild fields. Day after day, every blade of grass and riverside shrub seemed to whisper about her mysterious story, creating an atmosphere that was both excited and uneasy. The elders of the village began recounting old tales of Kean, the river deity of the Mississippi, a guardian said to appear during pivotal moments to deliver prophecies. To them, Amara was no longer just an ordinary weaver. She had been chosen to bring forth a mystical future, yet not everyone believed. Skeptics whispered behind her back, their eyes filled with a mix of suspicion and fear. "How do we know this isn't just a lie?" one woman asked as she washed rice by the riverbank. "Maybe she just wants attention." But other eyes were filled with hope. If she was truly chosen by Kean, this could mark a great change, the village elder remarked, his deep voice resonating like waves lapping against the shore. The full moon rose, casting its mysterious glow over the village. Moonlight reflected on the Mississippi, transforming it into a shimmering landscape from another world. Inside a small hut, Amara labored through intense pain, her breath ragged, sweat dripping like dewdrops onto leaves. Outside, villagers gathered in clusters, their whispers filling the night air. Some prayed for her, while others stood with folded arms, their sharp gazes piercing through the darkness. Inside the hut, the first cry of a baby rang out, shattering the tense atmosphere. Amara sobbed with joy and exhaustion, her trembling hands lifting her firstborn. The boy, named Eli, radiated a beauty akin to the morning sun. His glowing bronze skin shimmered under the moonlight, and his eyes, bright like the morning sun, left everyone present breathless. "A blessing!" joyful shouts echoed outside. Women in the village wept with happiness, believing Eli to be the beginning of a brighter future. But the joy was fleeting. Just minutes later, Amara was overwhelmed by another wave of intense pain. The midwife froze, stunned as she realized a second child was coming, something no one had foreseen. Outside, the whispers turned silent, leaving only the sound of wind rustling through the trees. And then, the second child was born, Zayn. The moment Zayn cried out, the air inside the hut seemed to freeze. His appearance was so unusual that no one dared speak. His eyes, one deep as the river's depths, the other golden as the blazing sun, stared directly at Amara, as if he understood the world from the very first moment. His skin shimmered strangely, as if covered in tiny particles of stardust. Though exhausted, Amara couldn't look away from her second son. Her trembling hand reached to touch Zayn's cheek, feeling a strange energy emanating from him. But the midwife stepped back, her wide eyes filled with fear. Whispers quickly spread across the village as news of Zayn's birth reached them. If Eli was seen as the light, Zayn was cast as the shadow. Those who had rejoiced moments earlier now exchanged worried glances. "The eyes of that child aren't normal," one man said, his voice shaking. "We've heard of omens like this before. A child like that can't bring anything good." Others tried to defend Amara and her children. "They're just babies," the elder interjected, though his voice carried a hint of unease. The whispers grew louder, snaking through every corner of the village like unseen serpents in the grass. People began to avoid Amara when she brought her children outside, their eyes lingering on Zayn with suspicion, as though he embodied a curse. Despite the rumors and judgment, Amara's love for both her children remained steadfast. When she looked into Eli's innocent eyes, she saw hope. But when her gaze fell on Zayn, her heart swelled with maternal love, but also tightened under the weight of Kean's prophecy. "How can anyone choose between their children?" Amara whispered one night, gazing at the moonlit Mississippi. She placed a hand on her chest, where her heart beat loudly, and murmured to the river, as though seeking answers from Kean himself. But there was no reply. Each time Zayn looked at his mother with his unusual eyes, Amara felt herself pulled into a different realm, one she could neither understand nor control. She loved him, yet couldn't deny that he carried something mysterious and powerful within him, something even she couldn't fully comprehend. As Eli and Zayn grew older, their differences became increasingly apparent. Eli, always cheerful, played with the other village children and was adored by everyone. He brought joy and comfort, like the warm rays of the morning sun that touched everything. Zayn, on the other hand, often sat alone by the riverbank, his two coloured eyes fixed on the flowing water. It seemed as though he was conversing with the river itself, whispering secrets no one else could hear. His presence carried an indescribable aura, both wondrous and unsettling. When a severe drought struck, Zayn knelt by the cracked earth of the riverbank. Placing his hands on the parched ground, he summoned a small stream of water that flowed into the village, saving their withering crops. The villagers were stunned, yet instead of gratitude, fear quickly crept in. If he can control the water, who knows what else he might do? One woman whispered, her gaze wary. The tale of Eli and Zayn became the centerpiece of every conversation in the village. Though they were brothers, they were seen as two sides of a coin. For Amara, her love remained unwavering, but the fear of the prophecy coming true haunted her. Each night, she prayed by the Mississippi, her eyes searching the shimmering water for some sign from Kean, a reassurance or guidance. But the river remained silent, its waves murmuring secrets that would never be revealed. Amara knew that one day, the prophecy would force her to make an impossible decision. Until then, she resolved to protect her children from the judgmental stares and poisonous whispers of the village. The Mississippi River continued to flow, carrying with it stories, fears, and hopes from the small village. At the heart of it all stood Amara and her two sons, like characters in a legend waiting to be written. Eli and Zayn grew up as two opposing sides of the same coin, each with a character and lifestyle as different as day and night. Eli, with his warm smile and compassionate gaze, was loved by the villagers. He helped mend fishing nets, harvest crops, and often played with the other children in the village. Whenever Eli appeared, it felt as if the world brightened, bringing a sense of peace and gentleness like the morning sun. In contrast, Zayn was quiet, like the shadow that fell over the Mississippi River at dusk. He often sat alone by the riverbank, his mismatched eyes, one a deep blue-green like the river's depths, the other glowing golden like the blazing sun, staring intently at the water. It was as if he were conversing with the river itself, whispering mysteries that no one else could hear. Zayn's presence evoked a strange feeling, both magical and unsettling. Over time, the differences between the two brothers became increasingly apparent, but Zayn couldn't escape the wary glances of the villagers. One day, the village faced a devastating drought. The ground cracked, and even the Mississippi River receded, exposing dry, cracked mudflats. The villagers were desperate, praying day and night to Kean, the river deity, but no sign of help came. On a grey and sombre morning, Zayn stepped out to the riverbank. His thin figure seemed to glow faintly in the dim light of the early sun. Kneeling down, he placed his hands on the dry, parched earth. A gentle breeze rustled past, carrying with it a hint of moisture. Suddenly, water began to flow from the ground beneath his hands. A small stream formed, weaving its way into the village, bringing life back to the dying fields. Villagers rushed to the scene, their eyes wide with astonishment at the miracle before them. But instead of gratitude, murmurs quickly spread. What has Zayn done? If he can control water, who knows what else he's capable of? Suspicion rather than appreciation was the only response Zayn received. The villagers grew more distant from Zayn. They began to avoid him whenever he appeared. The children who once played with Eli were now kept inside by their parents whenever Zayn walked by. Their gazes, once filled with curiosity, were now guarded and apprehensive, as though they were looking at something they couldn't understand or control. Despite this, Zayn never complained. He often returned to the riverbank, the only place where he felt truly at home. Whenever Zayn gazed into the water, he felt a deep connection, as if the river whispered comforting words to him. Or perhaps it was Zayn simply consoling himself. Meanwhile, Eli continued to bask in the love of the villagers. He was praised not just for his hard work, but for his unconditional kindness. Yet even Eli couldn't ignore the growing division that was quietly spreading through their family. "What do people think about my brother?" Eli asked his mother one evening. Amara sighed, her eyes drifting toward the river. "Zayn is part of the river, just as you are the sun. But not everyone is brave enough to understand that." One day, another incident stirred fear among the villagers. A young boy fell into the river, swept away by the strong current before anyone could react. Eli immediately jumped in, determined to save the child. But the river was swift, and Eli soon began to tire. Standing on the riverbank, Zayn raised his hand, his mismatched eyes glowing brightly. Something extraordinary happened. The rushing water suddenly slowed, as if obeying Zayn's command. Eli seized the opportunity, grabbing the boy and pulling him to safety. The villagers surrounded Eli, cheering and thanking him for his heroic actions. But when their eyes turned to Zayn, there was no admiration, only fear and suspicion. If he can make the river stop flowing, could he also make it rise and flood our village? One man whispered. From a distance, Amara watched her two sons with a heavy heart. One was celebrated as a beacon of light, while the other was seen as a shadow. How can they not see that both are part of each other? She wondered, tears streaming down her face. As time passed, rumours about Zayn's powers grew. Tales of him summoning rainstorms, controlling the winds, or even commanding the river to rise and consume everything began to circulate. No one knew if these stories were true, but they were enough to keep the villagers on edge. During a meeting of the village elders, a man stood and spoke firmly. "We cannot let this continue. Zayn's presence is a danger. The prophecy clearly states, one child will bring destruction." Those words were like sparks igniting the flames of fear, in the villagers' hearts. Though Amara wanted to protect her son, she couldn't stop the growing tide of suspicion. Amara knew she couldn't change how people viewed Zayn, but she resolved not to let anyone harm her son. One night, under the moonlit sky, she sat beside Zayn by the river, gently placing her hands on his shoulders. "You don't need to prove anything to them," Amara said, her voice soft yet firm. "You just need to be yourself. The river chose you for a reason, and I believe you will use your power for good." Zayn looked at his mother, his mismatched eyes shimmering with gratitude. "I'm not afraid of them," he said, "but I am afraid that one day the river will force me to make a choice I don't want to make." Amara pulled her son close, trying to comfort him. Deep down, however, she knew that day might come soon, a day when Zayn would have to confront his destiny, and the village would have to face the truth of the prophecy. The Mississippi River continued to flow, carrying with it the secrets and fears of the small village. But the quiet tension in the air felt like the calm before a storm. Everyone sensed that something monumental was on the horizon, something that would change everything forever. Eli and Zayn, though different, remained brothers, but would the bond between them be strong enough to withstand the power of the prophecy? And could Zayn prove that his strength was not a curse, but a gift? The answers awaited somewhere ahead as the Mississippi River continued its eternal journey, a silent witness to destiny and legend. The storm descended upon Louisiana on a dimly lit moonlit night, bringing with it roaring winds and violent waves from the Mississippi River. Roofs trembled under the force of nature and trees swayed as though bowing before an invisible power. The villagers huddled together in their small homes, whispering prayers to the river god Kean for protection. Outside, the sky was pitch black, occasionally torn apart by bright flashes of lightning. The sound of rain pounding on the rooftops was like the drumming of an urgent call. The storm seemed alive, like a giant creature roaring and trying to claim everything in its path. In the chaos, a cry for help pierced the night. A young boy, in his rush to find his mother, slipped and fell into the river. Horrified screams filled the air as the villagers rushed to the riverbank. The small figure of the child struggled in the raging waters on the verge of being swallowed by the depths. Eli was the first to act, leaping forward without hesitation. Determination filled his eyes as he sprinted through the muddy ground toward the river's edge. "Eli, no!" Amara shouted, but it was too late. Eli had already dived into the water. The river, wild and angry like a raging beast, did not deter him. He swam toward the boy, each stroke a battle against the current. On the shore, the villagers could only watch helplessly. None dared to enter the water. It was far too dangerous. Not far away, Zayn stood silently observing it all. Under the flicker of lightning, his heterochromatic eyes, one deep blue like the river's depths, and the other golden as the blazing sun, shone brightly, mirroring the fury of the river. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and then slowly raised his hand. At first, no one noticed, but then something miraculous happened. The raging waters suddenly calmed. The fierce waves softened, parting to create a small, smooth path that led Eli closer to the drowning boy. Eli quickly grasped the child's arm, pulling him close and holding on tightly. The boy sobbed uncontrollably as he was saved. Cries of astonishment erupted from the villagers, but their gazes weren't directed at Eli. They turned towards Zayn. Everyone seemed frozen, staring at the boy with a mix of awe and fear. When Eli returned to the shore with the child in his arms, the villagers surrounded him, cheering. Applause echoed through the stormy night, drowning out the howling wind. But Zayn did not receive such a welcome. "What did he just do?" a man asked, his voice trembling. "Zayn controlled the river. That's not the power of an ordinary person," another woman whispered, clutching her child tightly. The joy of the boy's rescue was overshadowed by Zayn's presence. They didn't see a boy trying to help. They saw a force they couldn't understand or control. "Zayn is cursed," someone said from the crowd. Murmurs spread quickly like wildfire through dry grass. Amara, who had witnessed everything, stepped out of the crowd. Her face was calm, but her eyes betrayed her pain. "Can't you see?" she said, her voice ringing like a challenge. "Without Zayn, Eli wouldn't have saved that boy. The river doesn't listen to you, but it listened to Zayn." The crowd fell silent, some lowering their heads as though pondering her words. But an elderly man stepped forward, his gaze stern. "We cannot ignore the truth. If Zayn can command the river, he could also flood our village. The prophecy said one child would bring destruction." "The prophecy doesn't decide everything," Amara retorted, her voice firm. "We are the ones who shape our fate." As the crowd began to divide between those who supported Amara and those who wanted Zayn gone, Eli stood up. His hair clung to his forehead, soaked from the storm, but his eyes were resolute. "My brother is not a curse," Eli said loudly, his voice cutting through the rain. "If you fear Zayn, it's because you don't understand him. He saved me. He saved this village during the drought. Can't you see? He only wants to help." Zayn looked at Eli, his mismatched eyes glinting with emotion. For the first time, he felt defended, accepted. The storm eventually passed, leaving behind a battered village and heavy hearts. The villagers began repairing their homes and collecting what had been swept away. Yet the atmosphere in the village remained uneasy. The whispers about Zayn persisted, growing even louder. Each time he walked through the village, suspicious and wary eyes followed him. Children were kept inside whenever he passed by. Despite this, Zayn never showed fear. He continued visiting the riverbank daily, his eyes distant as if conversing with the flowing water. One evening, under a pale moon, the village elder called for a meeting. Standing on a small wooden platform, his gaze swept over the crowd. "We cannot let this continue," he declared. "Zayn's presence has divided us. The prophecy clearly states that one child will bring destruction. We must know the truth." Amara stepped forward, shielding Zayn with her body. "You cannot condemn a child out of fear," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "If the river chose Zayn, then we must trust him." The elder shook his head, his eyes heavy with sorrow. "It's not that I don't trust him, Amara, but we need clarity. Tomorrow night, we will hold a ritual at the river. The river god Kean will give us the answer." As night fell, the villagers gathered by the Mississippi's dark waters, their eyes fixed on the black surface of the river. The full moon hung high in the sky, casting a cold glow on the scene. Zayn stood beside Amara and Eli, his heterochromatic eyes reflecting a strange calm. "I'm not afraid," Zayn whispered to his mother. "The river will never betray me." Amara gripped Zayn's hand tightly, though her heart churned with worry. This was not only a test for Zayn, but for the entire village and for herself. Would the river reveal the truth, or would it keep its secrets forever? The answer lay waiting in the silent depths of the Mississippi. The division within the village had reached its peak. Whispers about the prophecy and Zayn's powers were no longer confined to small conversations by the river or at the marketplace. It had become an obsession, a shadow looming over every corner of the village. Under pressure from the villagers, the elders decided to hold a grand ritual to seek judgment from the river god, Kean. The village was steeped in tension. Everyone knew that tonight, under the full moon, not only would Eli and Zayn's fates be determined, but the future of the village would also be changed forever. The full moon shone brightly over the Louisiana sky, casting a radiant glow on the Mississippi River, which shimmered like an endless silver ribbon. The villagers gathered along the riverbank, their eyes fixed on Eli and Zayn, who stood side by side under the moonlight. The atmosphere was unnervingly quiet, with only the wind rustling through the trees and the murmur of the river whispering its mysteries. Amara stood behind her two sons, her hands trembling, but her gaze was resolute. She had prayed for this day for many nights. Though her heart ached, she knew this was the challenge the river had set for her family. The elders emerged, led by the village chief, holding a golden bowl filled with water from the Mississippi. He stood on a small wooden platform, his voice breaking the silence. "Tonight, under the watchful eye of the river god Kean, we will uncover the truth. Eli and Zayn, you who bear the river's destiny, step forward. Eli stepped forward first, his eyes shining with determination, though a trace of worry lingered. Zayn followed, his mismatched eyes glowing in the night. They stood at the river's edge, where the moonlight reflected off the water like a shimmering mirror. The chief raised the golden bowl high, murmuring prayers in an ancient tongue. The wind picked up, sweeping across the water, and then a small wave began to rise. From the middle of the river, a radiant figure emerged. It was Kean, the god of the Mississippi. Kean's presence was majestic and otherworldly. Light emanated from his form, illuminating the riverbank and leaving everyone breathless. His eyes held the wisdom of the river itself, both gentle and stern. When he spoke, his deep voice thundered like the roar of the river. Eli and Zayn, you have been chosen by the river. Each of you carries a destiny, but the future is not mine to decide. It depends on your choices. Kean extended his hand toward Eli. Eli, what will you say before the river? Eli stepped forward, his bare feet feeling the cool ground. He took a deep breath, his eyes gleaming under the moonlight. I have grown up in the love and hope of this village, Eli said, his voice steady and clear. I will use my love to protect everyone, to bring peace and happiness. I believe that hope is the greatest strength, and I will do everything to keep it alive. The villagers nodded slightly, many of them moved by Eli's heartfelt words. A woman at the back even wiped away a tear. Kean then turned to Zayn, his gaze penetrating as if uncovering every secret in the boy's soul. Zayn, what about you? What will you say before the river? Zayn stood still for a moment, his heterochromatic eyes fixed on Kean. The air seemed to thicken, and every eye turned to him. Then he spoke, his voice calm yet resolute. I am not afraid, Zayn said. I know that my power is a part of the river, just as the river is a part of me. I will harness this power to prove that hope and strength can coexist. I will not let others' fears define who I am. The riverbank fell silent. Zayn's words not only made the villagers think, but also caused Kean to nod, his divine eyes glowing with approval. Kean smiled, a smile filled with both wisdom and sorrow. He raised his hand and pointed toward the river. The water began to shift, forming two glowing paths leading in opposite directions. One path led back to the village, while the other stretched into the dark depths of the river. Eli and Zayn, Kean said, you are both correct. The future lies in the hands of this village. Hope and strength are not enemies. They are two sides of the same coin, always in balance. But the village must decide. Will they choose to live in unity or let fear tear them apart? Eli and Zayn stepped forward, each taking a path. But instead of separating, they held hands and walked together on the glowing path created by Kean. The villagers watched in awe, their eyes filled with wonder and emotion. We must trust, Amara said, turning to the villagers. Hope and strength cannot be divided. If we choose division, we only destroy ourselves. The chief lowered his head, acknowledging the truth in Amara's words. He turned to the villagers, his voice echoing in the stillness. This is the time for us to unite. Eli and Zayn are not a curse. They are gifts from the river. But this gift only holds meaning if we learn to accept it. As the moonlight faded, the Mississippi River quietly returned to its tranquil state. But that calm was not just the restoration of nature. It was also a moment etched deeply in the hearts of every villager. Kean had vanished like a passing breeze, taking with him his mystery and supernatural power. Yet the echoes of that fateful night continued to resonate, not just across the water, but within every soul in the village. Eli and Zayn, two individuals once thought to be completely different, were now celebrated as true heroes of the village. Their brave actions had proven that strength does not come solely from physical power or magical abilities, but also from love, unity, and unwavering faith. Eli, with his intelligence and compassion, found the courage to conquer his inner fears. Zayn, with his fiery heart, demonstrated that even those who are misunderstood can rise to do what is right. The villagers now understood that their destiny did not lie in the hands of a river god or any supernatural force. Hope and destruction were not determined by lofty powers. They resided in their own hands and hearts. They learned that when people embrace love, unity, and overcome fear, they can change even the most impossible situations. And the Mississippi River continues to flow, carrying with it the tale of Eli and Zayn as a living legend. Their story is told everywhere, a symbol of courage and an indomitable spirit. But what further challenges might the river bring? Will the villagers truly be prepared for the next trials life has in store for them? What do you think about the story of Eli and Zayn? Is this truly the end, or just the beginning of a new legend? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel to keep up with more stories of courage, love, and timeless values. If you're of African American heritage, share this with your friends, family, and loved ones in the United States to help preserve the culture, history, and folklore of our people.